Welcome to your Positive Energy Recharge. I'm Jade Sterling, your women's health nurse and coach. I'm here to help you to balance your hormones, master your emotions, and live a life you love. And I'm often talking about how we need to let go of control over people, places, things, situations outside of ourselves, because we have no control over what's happening out there, but we have 100% control over what's happening in here. And I'm pointing in here into our minds because, as I've talked about in previous videos, we have certain things that affect our human biology that we also can't control. But we have full control over our experience of that biology and how our psychology can support that experience. And what I want to talk about today is how we can't necessarily control our communication and our interaction with other people and things that are happening in our lives. But what we can do is influence them. I have lots of clients, often on a regular basis, talking about their relationships, particularly with their children and their spouses, but also with colleagues, also with acquaintances, neighbors, people in their community, and even people that they don't know. And they can see things that they feel are either not in line with their morals, ethics, and values, or they feel are not going to be of benefit to the other person or to them. So they want to be able to have some kind of a say in their behavior. Now, this particularly comes into play. Recently, I had a client whose husband was not engaged in healthy lifestyle choices that she felt supported his health and well-being or the longevity of their marriage. The amount of alcohol he was consuming and the foods and the lack of sleep and exercise, it was culminating for her in a whole bunch of anxiety that wanted to be able to, she said, not control him, but we do want to control them. We do want to manipulate them, not necessarily in a malicious way, but we want to be able to take that situation and make changes. And that is trying to control things. Now, the first thing I'm going to mention is, again, from previous videos, where do our behaviors come from? What tells our body what to do? Let's just have a quick recap. We have thoughts that we think about the circumstances in our life that are actually neutral. There is nothing out there that is good or that is bad. Nothing. It's what our brain does with the things that are happening that decides whether something is good or bad. It's a thought that we have. And the thought creates a chemical reaction in our body that releases emotions into our bloodstream. That becomes what we feel, and our feelings tell our body what to do. So ultimately, we cannot control another person's behavior because their behavior is coming from the feelings that they are having, and their feelings are coming from their thoughts. And how much control do we have over somebody else's thoughts? Technically zero. We can't get inside a person's head and reprogram, but we can plant seeds into their minds that might grow as a thought that they believe, that releases chemicals into their bloodstream, that creates a feeling for them to change how they're behaving. This is called influence. And how do we have influence over people without trying to take control? Well, Dr. Paul Jenkins, who is the founder pretty much of all the principles that I teach, go back to the Tuesday chats where I have a chat with him about his way of life, his way of communicating in the world, the principles, the models, the programs that he has created. It's definitely worth your while, because when I eventually checked out his work, it changed my life. And here I am today teaching a lot of his principles, creating my own out of the work that he has produced into this world. I cannot shout it from the rooftops loudly or highly enough. But Dr. Paul has created another model that is called the influence quadrant. Well, the influence quadrant is one quadrant of the 4 ways that we communicate, the 4 different quadrants, the 4 ways that we communicate with other people. And there is one way where we can actually put ourselves in a position of influence to be able to plant seeds for whoever it is that we want in our lives, to water it and then create a different experience. But remember, you can't do the watering. You can plant the seeds from a place of influence, But it's very important to understand how you actually are communicating. And are you planting those seeds, or are you throwing those seeds at them, or are you just holding the seeds in your hand, not knowing what to do with them? Are you communicating effectively? Are you actually engaged in interactions where words are heard, listened to, digested, processed, assimilated, with the opportunity for seeds to grow? And this is what we're talking about today. So let's just briefly talk about the 4 different ways that we do communicate. And is that working for you? The first way we communicate is from a place of self-consciousness. And this is where, when we're talking to a person in conversation, it's all about, how do I feel about me? You're worried about how you are showing up in this situation. I could be very much distracted by my clothes or my hair, or do I feel like the words that I'm saying are true, or have I really thought through about this? I'm actually in my own head, in my own bubble, still trying to process my own thoughts and feelings to another person without having actually been able to do that with certainty. This uncertainty creates self-consciousness. How do I feel about me in this situation? Do I think I'm showing up the right way? And that creates anxiety. And when we're having anxiety in any situation, but in conversations and communications with others, it dials up our nervous system. It creates that I'm not really sure. It takes the blood flow from the front of the brain, which is the thinking, rational part of our brain, that can engage, that can actually connect. The blood flow leaves the front of the brain towards the back, because the anxiety that triggers your brain to think, I just need to protect you. I just need to defend you, keep you safe, and oftentimes just prove you right. And the thinking part of your brain doesn't have a chance to be involved. From this place of, how do I feel about me? We're self-conscious. We create anxiety. We can't effectively communicate with people and have any sort of effective messaging to actually help them understand where we're coming from, let alone put us in a place of influence. We need to find another way. The second quadrant, and the second way that we tend to communicate with other people, is, how do you feel about me? How do you feel about the way I'm presenting myself? How do you feel about the words I'm saying? Often I'll start to get distracted on Zoom calls when someone mentions my nose ring. What do they think of my nose ring? What do they think of my earrings, or my jewelry, or my outfit in the context of this particular scenario? What do they think about me? These thoughts generate a feeling of insecurity. Insecurity also creates anxiety that dials up the nervous system, where the thinking part of our brain wants to leave the building and just keep us safe, and not really think about how we're connecting and consciously interacting with the person or people or circumstance that's happening in our life. That is coming from a place of insecurity. That's the second quadrant. The third quadrant is where we come from a place of criticism. This is, how do I feel about you? This is often where we show up as parents or as spouses, where we have certain opinions ourselves, and we then tend to communicate how we feel about their actions and their behaviors and what it is that they're engaged in. This is most of the time parents looking at children and trying to get them to fall in line with their ethics, morals, and values, but we're still coming from a place of criticism. When we're coming from that place, we're coming from a place of judgment, which can also dial up our nervous system, because we feel that things are not in line with how they should be. Things are not as they should be. You're not behaving as I want you to be. In this case of my client with her husband, you're not doing the things that you should. I'm having judgments about that and how that's going to affect my life. Whoop, dial up the nervous system. Thinking part of the brain leaves. Do we communicate and show up in a way that we feel is true and authentic and open and loving? No, we don't. We're coming from a place of criticism. That is the third way that we communicate. And it doesn't put us in a place to be able to be open, loving, and influential in planting seeds for ways of which we want to help people and be of benefit to people. The fourth way that we communicate, the fourth quadrant, is the influence quadrant, and it's how we show up. How do you feel about you? This is the question that we have in our mind. I actually heard one of my fellow coaches say it perfectly the other day. There's a movie called Leo, same name as my eldest boy. And this movie about Leo, I think Leo is a lizard. And Leo is a lizard that lives in, I haven't seen the movie myself. This is very obvious right now. But my colleague had seen it. And it was a lizard that lives in a fish tank or an enclosure within a school, within a classroom. And there's something in the scenario where there's a particular student in the classroom. I'll try and just come up with it. I don't even really know the story. But this student is trying to get people to like her. And in each situation, she finds that when she starts to ask questions about other people, how do you feel about that? What do you think about that? How does that make you feel? They start to feel seen and understood and listened to, heard, validated. And people really start to like her, and they start to want to talk to her. They start to want to engage in communicating with her because of the way she's asking questions. And so I thought that was just a beautiful example from my colleague, and I really want to go out there and watch the movie myself. I'm sure my husband's seen it with my kids. I've missed that one, as to how that is a really effective way to get yourself into a place of influence by asking, how do you feel about you? How do you feel about that situation? Perhaps in the sense of my client asking her husband, how do you feel about your lifestyle behaviors and choices? And sometimes it can also be the way that you word it, remembering that you are not actually asking them from a place of criticism. You want them to know that you're sincerely and genuinely asking, how do they feel about them? I find that when I've had that conversation in a different context with my husband, how do you feel about that? He can actually bark back with, I feel pretty crap, actually. That makes me feel terrible. And that doesn't necessarily have to then create conflict, because then we don't want to flip into a place of purple where we go, oh, see, it's not working for you. We actually just want to stay in green. Now, when I'm talking about colors here, I've jumped into the colors because there is actually a visual that goes with it. Criticism is purple. Insecurity is orange. Self-consciousness is red. And influence is green. I try not to show the videos and the visuals in these videos because I really want to make sure that you're listening to what I'm saying, you're not distracted by the visual. But in this case, I may have confused it. I have to go back and do another video about it. But I do these, as you know, without scripting, just from my heart to try and communicate things that I think will be helpful to you in your life. So in this way, we have to make sure that if we're coming from a place of, let's just recap. This is a good moment to recap. Place of self-consciousness, we're in the red, we're creating anxiety. From a place of insecurity, how do you feel about me? We're in the orange. We're creating more anxiety. From the place of criticism, we're in the purple. How do I feel about you? We're creating judgment and influence in the green. How do you feel about you? This is how we're creating influence. This is how we're creating connection. This is how we're planting seeds for people to start to think about their own actions. And as I said, even if you open a can of worms for them, you show them a mirror, you shine a torch in a dark place and they don't like what they see, it is up to them. It is 100% up to them to take that seed that you've planted. Even if they don't like it, even if they don't like how it feels, they may throw it away. They may stomp on it. They may let it sit there and think about it and bury itself in the soil of their mind. They may even start to water it. You can't have control over that part. But what you can have control over is how you show up asking questions to help them see, have some kind of awareness as to how do they feel about themselves. This puts you in the place of influence. This puts you in a place of authenticity and honest, open, effective communication to be able to benefit your relationships and how you're interacting and showing up with the key people in your life. Go back and look at the 7 key relationships video and then come back and watch this video again and see how you're showing up. Are you putting yourself in a place of influence, or are you putting yourself in a place of criticism, insecurity, or self-consciousness? This is the time to be aware. I'm going to make another video about this where I'm actually going to show you the model. I'm going to show it and flesh it out in greater detail, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a taster, and I hope that I was able to be as clear as possible in that particular context. I really hope that you can go into your day looking for how you can benefit others in a way that doesn't just benefit yourself, but is simply to help them feel that they're moving forward towards their purpose and their fulfillment and something that's worthwhile for them, because that becomes reflective on you as a human being and helps to clarify all of those things for yourself. Sometimes we think that we have to go in and do the work ourselves before we can go out and help other people. But actually, it doesn't have to always work that way. In fact, a lot of the time it doesn't. Just wanted to put this at the tail end of this particular topic. I heard a beautiful story of a man recently who was living in New York at the time of September 11, when the Twin Towers fell down and his mum was really, really sick. Chaos was obviously happening in the city. His mum passed away, I think he said 1 week after the towers fell. And he didn't know what to do with himself. He didn't know how to grieve. He was grieving his home. He was grieving his mum. He was grieving his community. He was grieving the state of the world. It was a big time that he explained himself. He could have just gone downhill, could have spiraled down into a place of God knows where. But what he did instead was sign up to help the cleanup at ground zero, and ended up being a huge mover and shaker in not only the cleanup, but also the repair, the restoration of people's physical and mental states of health and well-being in the recovery after that period. And he threw himself into it literally a week after his mum had died. And he found that through the place of service and just giving service and asking people about them and how they were doing and how they could get back on their feet and how we could move forward, that's when he found his own clarity to be able to do the same. So I hope you can take that little bit of inspiration. It just gives me goosebumps every time to be able to move forward in your own life. If you are feeling stuck right now, if you're feeling like I just can't control the world, you can't. And you can relax now. You can find a place of peace in that. You can have influence. You can plant your seeds, but you can only really have full control over what's happening for you inside here to be able to move forward. And maybe you need to go out and give some service and have influence in other people's lives to be able to do that with more clarity, more certainty, and more openness and love in your heart. I hope you have a beautiful day. Own your path, create your peace. Every day, moment by moment, breath by breath. And I'll see you in the next video.